guys, what's up? It's Lauren. Welcome back to my channel. I have thought about making this video so many times, but I think what stopped me in the past was that I always thought that I should be better, I should be healed, and I should be stronger before putting myself onto the internet to tell my story. But I've realized that anxiety is an ongoing battle. It's very day to day, and I may never consider myself fully healed. And so the video just may never come. So here we are, and I decided I wanted this to be my last video of 2019 because this is gonna be a video that is obviously not DIY, not a vlog, if you haven't realized by the title yet, but it's gonna be something that's a lot more real and something that I have never talked about. And I think if I can tell my story and just make one person in the world feel a little less alone, it's something that I absolutely want to do. You guys know I've always been a big advocate for mental health and therapy and anxiety, and I don't want to keep this a secret anymore. So yeah, this video is going to be really different, and I feel like I should mention that I do have permission from everyone that's involved in this story, because some parts of it are not exactly my story. They're a part of my story and a part of my journey, but I do have permission from everyone involved in this, and I know you guys will be super respectful of my privacy and theirs, and I feel like I should maybe give a trigger warning for a few things anxiety and trauma related before we hop in. I'm sorry if this has been like kind of a scary start to a video. This is not something I have ever done. My palms are so sweaty right now. Like if you could see the condensation or whatever it is that's on my palms right now, it's not cute. It's not cute. I'm really nervous for this video, to be completely honest. I also think it makes a little bit of sense for those of you who are just starting to learn about mental health, and there's gonna be a few phobia names that are like a little crazy looking, so I'm gonna pop some definitions up on screen. I am in no way, shape, or form a certified mental health professional of any kind, so these are just cited from reputable online sources. I think the overall goal of this video is to just share my story and just shine one more little beam on mental health, you know, in the digital world, because it is tough out there, and I feel like there is always more room for openness and support for one another, because girl, I am going through it, and I know some of you are too. So that's the goal. Again, I'm not a mental health professional, but here are some helpful definitions for throughout the video. So where it all started, I've always been a highly organized, highly motivated, type A, high stress individual. I'm a worrier, I'm a planner, I am an overthinker. I personally think there are personality types that are a little more susceptible to being the anxious type, and I would consider myself one of those personality types and one of those people. In the spring of 2011, I was 17, finishing up my senior year of high school in my hometown, and someone very close to me had their very first seizure, which would be the first of many in a battle with epilepsy. I had heard of seizures. You know, you see them in TV and movies. People sometimes have them when they overdose on drugs, but I personally had never witnessed one. We were alone, and a trip to the bathroom ended in them violently convulsing on my floor. In that moment, I feel like I was almost having like an out-of-body experience. I was hysterically crying, fumbling with the phone, trying to dial 911, and I have never felt so much sheer terror in my life. So this would be the first time that I would experience feeling like a full loss of control, but while simultaneously feeling like I was responsible for the scenario that was happening in front of me. I feel like my brain was just not properly equipped to process the emotions of watching a loved one so violently fight for their life. So typically seizures stop after a few minutes. This one did not, and I later learned that could have led to severe brain damage in all kinds of different forms. And they were induced into a 4-day coma to prevent any brain damage and just let the brain rest and potentially heal. And this would be the start of a 3-year journey learning how to physically and mentally help, treat, and support a loved one experiencing epilepsy, where they could experience seizures every other month, all the way up to multiple seizures a day. And I did not take care of myself during this time. I was constantly living in a state of stress and anxiety of when the next seizure would be, or if the next seizure would be really, really bad and I'd lose them. I definitely should have gone to therapy to process the trauma that had happened, but also to learn coping mechanisms to improve my day-to-day stress and anxiety. But I think I was so caught up in the combination of the fear of what had happened and what could happen that I was fully just not thinking about how this could have repercussions on my future self later on in life. My loved one who had and still has epilepsy is honestly so much stronger than I will ever be. I think we both went through a lot mentally and obviously physically on their ends, and it definitely took a toll on us. I look back and I wish that I had gotten help, because I know how high stress of an individual that I can be, and I feel like I probably transferred a lot of that energy onto them as well and let that affect both of us. In the fall of 2011, I moved out for the very first time to Toronto for university, and I feel like this was the first time that I really felt the true effects of anxiety affecting my life. It became to the point where I couldn't leave my dorm room. I felt sick 24/7. I would make up stupid excuses to not go to class, and I had never felt so consistently out of control of my own life. And I don't think I'll ever know for sure, but I think it was a combination of not being near my family, knowing literally no one, and just kind of missing that core support that I had had all throughout high school, and having this new trauma that I had just experienced without having properly processed it. Something in me just cracked or changed or snapped, and I spiraled into a really scary place. And fast forward to winter of 2012, I had my very first severe anxiety attack. It was during an exam that honestly I was very prepared for, and I was in this massive convention hall surrounded by a sea of like 5,000 kids writing the same exam, and it started with feeling just a little bit panicky. And I don't think I really understood the phrase fight or flight until this moment, because my body was like, you need to leave, you cannot be here, there are no other options, you are not fighting this, you are flighting this, you cannot be here. I know I'm making light of it now, but I was truly so terrified, and I felt like my body had betrayed me because it was doing things that I had no control of. And in this time, I had zero coping mechanisms to get myself through this. I had this tunnel vision to the exit of where I felt like was my only option to go. My body temperature spiked, my fingertips were going numb, and I felt like I could not breathe. And obviously I've had lots more anxiety attacks since this day, and they can look and feel so different every time, which I think is really interesting and honestly a little scary. I've experienced everything from nausea to numbness in my spine and neck, hyperventilation, loss of balance and coordination. Like I feel like I can barely walk sometimes, and it can just look and feel different per person. So I started therapy in 2012 after that first severe anxiety attack, and I feel like you learn pretty quickly that therapy is a lot like dating, and not every therapist is for you, and they're not always your most compatible match. And that's okay. I think it makes sense, you know, like dating, to meet a range of people. I'll always remember one of the first therapists that I met with literally told me that therapy couldn't fix me, but maybe medication could. And so I broke up with her, I dumped her, I fired her. I'm not sure. We didn't see each other again. And I think what's so great about our generation is that there's so many different kinds of therapy, and I've tried basically all of them, to be completely honest. I've done phone and like text chat therapy on websites like BetterHelp. I just personally find that I connect clearer with someone when I'm able to see them face to face and we can bounce back conversation in real time. So I prefer to have an in-person session with a therapist, but there are so many amazing resources, some free and some paid for, that are all available for those of you who are also going through this. And I have learned so much from therapy about myself, myself about my trauma, about how I process my trauma, and how I transferred that trauma and that feeling of being out of control into other anxieties and phobias, coping mechanisms, why things happen and why things work. I know the idea of confiding into technically a stranger can be really scary, but I do think that knowledge is power, and it's so therapeutic to me when I feel like I better understand myself and what I've been through and how I got to where I am, that I truly believe that after every single therapy session, I'm a little bit stronger and I'm a little bit better and I'm a little bit more armed with knowledge to fight against my anxiety. And I think my main goal in therapy is to not only properly process the trauma that I experienced, but it's more about moving forward and learning coping mechanisms to maintain my mental health on a daily basis. I can't go back and fix what happened or unsee or unexperience or unhear everything that happened, but I can control how my brain sees things in the future and how things are happening currently. Two of the main techniques that I've tried with therapists are EMDR and CBT. If you're interested and want to dive more into that on the internet, those are the two that I have tried and have been fairly successful with. Also, I feel like it's so crazy that I haven't told you guys this, and I almost feel like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. It's been a lot, and I feel like it's a part of my past, and you guys know so much about me, and I'm so glad that this is a piece of me that you now know as well. So now to get into the specifics, now that you kind of know a little bit of my backstory. So I have a generalized anxiety disorder that may have been triggered by trauma with mild PTSD. Even more specifically, I have agoraphobia and emetophobia. To the best of my understanding, therapists think that the lack of control that I experienced during that first seizure led to an anxiety disorder that revolves around control or the feeling of not having control, which then also leads to the constant worry of not having or being able to regain control in a future scenario. So essentially, my worst anxiety-related nightmare would be a scenario where I would get sick in a place where I feel trapped. And to give you some examples of thoughts that go through my head while having agoraphobia and emetophobia are, do I feel sick right now? Has anyone done this activity and then it led to them being sick? Will eating this raise the chances of me being sick? What will I do if I get sick? Where is the exit? Where is the nearest bathroom? Essentially, how can I prevent myself from being in a position where I could get sick and then feel trapped while sick? I know how confusing this may sound to someone who has never heard of any of this, but I'm so glad that you're still here in the video. It means so much to me. It's an irrational obsession with the fear of getting sick and feeling trapped. And it's to the point where when I'm feeling really anxious, I'll make excuses to not leave my house. And if I do leave my house, I'm like a walking pharmacy. If you ever need a Tums or a Pepto or water, I have got you, because I'm preparing for essentially my worst nightmare is getting sick. And so in my head, I have all of these prevention techniques like carrying Pepto or Tums to prevent any early symptoms of maybe feeling sick, because if I do feel sick and I'm out, that can sometimes be the end of my night and I'm like, I'm starting to feel sick, I have to go home. And again, I know how surprising or confused this might all seem to someone who has no idea that I'm low-key sometimes living with a debilitating disorder and obsession that I've never really fully explained or talked about. And honestly, a lot of my friends don't even know the extent to this disorder. And to me, it's so crazy to think about the possibility of not having these thoughts consume my head constantly. Having rational thoughts or irrational thoughts about other things, like, can't relate. Again, I know that I am making light of this situation and I don't mean to offend anyone else who also goes through this, but I think I've just had it for so long that I feel like I've come to terms with it, and it's just me and my emetophobia just chilling every day. So that's kind of just like the outlook that I have on it. I'm not gonna let it control my life. I'm not gonna let it ruin my life. I'm not gonna let it hold me back from most things. If I'm being honest, like, it definitely holds me back from some things, but I'm not gonna let it take over my life. And I think on the seizure front, a lot of that may heal with time, but that will always be a trigger for the PTSD. And obviously seeing a seizure in TV or media or whatever is really hard, but I think what's almost harder are the flashbacks that just can come at any time, or if I hear someone making a choking sound that reminds me of the sound of when someone has a seizure and they're gasping for air, it immediately sends my heart racing. Or even if I'm sleeping with someone and they make a random twitch, it'll just wake me up out of a dead sleep, because I just have these like pre-wired reactions to things that are seizure and seizure emotion related. And obviously I've worked through a lot of this at therapy, but I do think it'll be something that just heals with time. And there's always a light at every tunnel, and that is so important. If there's one thing that you take from this video, it's that there's always hope, there's always positivity, and there's always help. My parents are so incredibly understanding if I have to get up mid-dinner and leave just to get some air, and Jeremy has been awake with me at 3 in the morning helping me get through an anxiety attack. People care and they want to help, and you need to let them. In the past, I've felt so trapped and guilty for having an anxiety disorder. I've had someone completely ignore me while I'm having an anxiety attack, and let me tell you, that does not help the anxiety attack when you feel anxious about an already occurring anxiety attack. And those are just not the people that you should be surrounding yourselves with. Anxiety does not define you, but it can definitely help weed out the people who don't truly love and care for you. Next, I want to talk about medication, because that's been a big part of my recovery and my journey as well, but this is obviously a personal preference and opinion, and it's something that I encourage you to talk to your doctor about if you're interested on learning more. So I have 2 types of medications, and they have made a life-changing impact on me personally. I have a day-to-day pill that I take before bed every single night, and I have a separate pill that I can take if I'm having a severe anxiety attack. When I first started on medication in 2012, it's such a weird feeling to describe, and it may not click for everyone, but it's almost as if a cloud had been parted or lifted or dissolved from my brain, and it was the first time that I could finally see clearly and really process the emotions and the feelings that I was experiencing. And I think I owe the first steps of recovery to my medication. I think it's also really important to note here that medication doesn't just magically make your problems go away and disappear forever and you're magically healed. That's absolutely not the case. I was in therapy at the time, and I feel like as this cloud parted, I could finally understand the coping mechanisms that I was learning and accept them into my life and start applying them in a realistic way. Oh my gosh, guys, my feet are painfully asleep right now. Oh my gosh, I don't know what position to be in. Okay. On this anxiety journey, I feel like one of the biggest things that I've learned about myself personally is I find that knowledge is power. I know I mentioned that earlier. But learning about my disorders and reading the research behind why different coping techniques work and hearing other people's experiences who are going through the same thing that I am is so therapeutic for me. And I guess that's also a part of what I'm hoping to do with this video, is just reach people who are feeling the same way that I do on a daily basis, because I love hearing the different ways that people get through their day who are struggling with the same types of things. And I think overall, the more I know, the more powerful I feel against my anxiety. I know not everyone has access to the resources to meet with a therapist or pay for some kind of therapy service, but I feel like a lot of the things that I've learned that have stuck with me and helped me the most are actually things that I've learned on my own, just through TED Talks and YouTube videos and articles on the Anxiety and Depression Association of America website. There are so many incredible, helpful resources where you can learn so much and find ways for free to help you get through your struggles. A few of my personal favorite anxiety coping techniques that you guys can definitely do more research on are grounding methods, deep breathing, meditation, positive self-talk, and personally grounding has really changed my life during an anxiety attack. So if there's one to recommend, I definitely encourage you to read a little bit more about grounding. I'm sure that a lot of you who also struggle with anxiety know that anxiety comes in waves, and I feel like I've learned a lot about the patterns of my anxiety, and I can also recognize when I need to spend a little more time practicing self-care and taking care of my mental health. For example, one of my patterns is that if I have something that's very high pressure and stressful, I always find a way to get through it, but afterwards, as soon as my body can kind of let go and I can take a breath, I crash in a very, very big way. So you guys know that we just recently wrapped the filming for Craftopia, the HBO Max show, and during those 3 weeks I was so anxious that for some reason one day, irrationally, I would wake up so sick. It would ruin the production budget, it would ruin the travel plans for all the kids that had flown in, and it would just cost HBO thousands of dollars for this anxiety that I couldn't shake of getting sick, even though there's no reason for me to get sick. And so that was the day-to-day that I was living during the filming of Craftopia. And so, of course, as I always do, I got through it and I crashed. But I'm good. Like, I take care of myself. I know that it's coming. I know that it happens every time. There's things that I can do to help, you know, manage it as soon as I do know that I got through something stressful and I know that there's like a let go coming. But it's day to day, and it's probably something that will continue to be day to day for potentially the rest of my life. And as much as I wish that it would be something that I could just wake up one day and it would be gone, I know that's not the reality. And I feel like the perspective that you do have on your anxiety is really, really important. I'm getting stronger, I'm getting smarter, and I'm learning more every single day, and it prepares you to fight against your anxiety. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that every day is rainbows and sunshine. I absolutely have breakdowns out of frustration that I can't be better and I can't change the way that I think and I can't rewire my brain to unsee some of the things that happened to me in the past. I absolutely can feel like a burden on my loved ones for having something that can sometimes be so debilitating and can affect others that are in my life. But I just want you to know that you are not alone in this. I am absolutely going through it every single day, and it's a battle, and it's going to be a battle, but I believe in you, I believe in me, and if I can make one single person feel less alone in this through this video, I've done my job, and I feel good about this video and sharing my experience. I'm really scared to upload this video, I'm not gonna lie. This is a lot. Like, this is something that it has weighed so heavily on me, and you know, is a big part of who I am and who I've become, and it's something that I want you guys to know about me. So I love you guys. I'm happy that this is my last video of 2019. This is more real and raw than anything I've ever put onto the internet. I'm nervous, but Happy New Year. I'll make sure to leave some resources and some keywords that you guys can do some more research on if you're interested in, but there is always a light in every battle, in this fight and this tunnel, whatever you want to call it, and I'm right here with you. So I will see you guys in 2020. Okay, bye.